In this video, we're going to talk about 24mm and the variety it comes in. Let's go on a trip and compare the Samyang 24F 2.8, 1.8, and Sony 24 Gmaster. It is also confusing, and let's make some sense of it. Before we go down to the ride, you'd have to ask yourself, why 24mm as a prime? And the answer is simple. It's interesting. The distortion becomes your friend. It's something outside of the ordinary. At 24mm, distortion can be high because you have to be close to your subject, and at the same time, you can work that to your advantage. This focal length is a little unconventional to work with. You can definitely distort your subject on top of being unflattering to start with. Take a good look in the mirror.
Wow.
It's very wide, and depending how close your subject is in or outside the frame, it can provide very drastic looking images. So I'm going to try my best to cover as much detail as I can, so use chapters, navigate, circle around. A little disclaimer, the gear in this video is bought and paid for by me with money I took from my wife's purse. She doesn't watch this video. Be sure to give the video a like, and let's get started. First off is the design. The Samyang f2.8 has a silver painted aluminum lens mount without weather sealing gasket. The body is shiny plastic without any buttons or switches. The manual focus ring is a little stiff. It doesn't feel that great, and that could be due to the smallest circumference of the bunch. The front filter thread is 49mm with a close focusing distance of 0.2 meters or 0.79 feet. The lens hood is shiny plastic and a little bit flimsy. Overall, the lens is basic, like a Kardashian before plastic surgery. Next up is the Samyang f1.8. It has a nice looking shiny lens mount with weather sealing gasket. The body is matte black, feels somewhat premium. It has a clicky focus hold button and a switch for manual focus, autofocus, or aperture control. The manual focus ring feels great, nice and smooth. It uses a 58mm front filter thread with a minimum focus distance of 0.9 meters or 0.62 feet. The lens hood is solid. Feels like a Sony OEM hood. Last one of the bunch is the Gmaster, which has a shiny lens mount with weather sealing gasket. It has a matte black barrel with aperture ring which can be clicked or declicked, a focus hold button, and an AF/MF switch. The manual focus ring feels great, nice rubber handle, and the front filter thread is 67mm with a close focus distance of 0.24 meters or 0.79 feet, the same as the f2.8 Samyang. The lens hood is absolutely premium, stiff with felt-lined interior. The weight of the lenses on my scale, I have the 2.8 at 92 grams, 1.8 at 227 grams, and the 1.4 at 447 grams. In case you needed, the more expensive lenses are full-featured. Now let's check out the sharpness of this lens. Starting off, everything wide open. f2.8 is on the left, Gmaster on the right. As you can see, the Gmaster is significantly sharper in the center. The 1.8 is sharper, enters in the center, wide open. Moving mid-frame, the 1.8 is also sharper than 2.8 wide open. The Gmaster is significantly sharper than the 2.8 wide open. Moving on to the edges, once again, it is now even a lot sharper. The Gmaster, as you can see on the right, is just a ton sharper than the 2.8. The 1.8 is rivaling the Gmaster, both very sharp. The 2.8 looks soft comparatively. The far corners, as you can see, they are in different leagues. This is the Samyang at 1.8, and here is the GM at 1.4. They are both much sharper than the f2.8. Next up, all three lenses at f8. Here is the 2.8 and here is the 1.8 Samyang. Go towards the center 100%. You can see that the Samyang f1.8 is still a little bit sharper. Here's the Gmaster. It's a little bit sharper than 2.8. So the 2.8 even stop down never gets quite the same level. It does get close. Moving to the mid frame, like I said, it gets close. It still lags behind. And here is the f1.8. Again, it is just much more crisper. Moving to the edges, the lines are just much more defined here. And far corners, yeah, there is definitely a large difference right here when it comes to the far corners. The f1.8 stop down to f8 is extremely good, and so is the Gmaster. As you can see, they are both extremely good when stopped down. The 2.8 lens never really catches up. However, I do find it suitable. Aside from test charts, how does it look in the field? The f2.8 on the left, gmaster on the right, 100%. Center sharpness is fairly comparable. I would say that the gmaster has a little bit more detail. However, it's not a whole lot more. Samyang f1.8 has a little bit more detail. You can see right here that there is a little bit more contrast. Things pop just a little bit more. Moving towards the edges, the definition of the evergreen is clear here. You can see it is very clear. When it comes to the gmaster, it's more clear than the f2.8. That's for sure. With both lenses, there is some softening. I would say that the 1.8 is probably the strongest among these. And the far edges, here is the 1.8 compared to 2.8. It is much clearer, much sharper. Here is the gmaster, again, much clearer, much sharper than the 2.8. At landscape apertures of f8, both of them are fairly sharp in the center. However, you see that the 1.8, which is virtually the same as the gmaster, is a little bit more sharp. There is more contrast. Moving on to the mid frame, they are fairly comparable at this point. There's a tiny bit more definition on these evergreen containers. The far edges is where it excels. You see the f1.8 at f8 is clearly sharper, much more detail. And while the 2.8 has improved a lot, it's still not completely there. And for reference, here's the f2.8 wide open compared to the f2.8 at f8. There is a noticeable improvement. However, it does not improve enough to close in on the gmaster or the 1.8. Sharpness is nice, but what about the bokeh effect? Is it soft and gooey, or is it contrasty and distracting? Let's take a look. First set, can you tell which is which? Time for the reveal. This next set, labeled A, B, and C, can you tell which is which? This set has an infinite background. Time for the reveal. What happens when you have a closer background? Focus is on the persimmons. Time for the reveal. Next set, with the background somewhat further away, can you tell the difference? And here is the reveal. When it comes to quality of blur, I would say the GM is the clear favorite, followed by the f2.8. The 1.8 has some outlining. And when it comes to overall look of the background, I would say that the GM is the clear favorite, followed by the f1.8, then 2.8 as expected. Up next, how do these lenses compare when it comes to flaring and sunstars? All three lenses are wide open. How do you think it fares? In my opinion, the GM and the Samyang f1.8 do considerably better than the 2.8. Clearly in a league of their own. I would give the GM the edge. It has less of a problem when the light is coming in from the sides. Stop down. The GM and 1.8 are close, but I'll give the edge to the GM. The sunstars of the f2.8 stop down to f16 is a little bit sloppy. GM and 1.8 are fairly comparable. Both produce nice sunstars in my opinion. On a Sony system, you sort of expect state-of-the-art autofocus. How do these lenses compare up to the gmaster? In a backlit scenario, all three lenses do fairly well. No issues here. When it comes to the normal autofocus, as expected, it works well. And low light is where the problem begins, with the 2.8 struggling on occasion. The GM and f1.8 do fairly well in the lowest of light levels. The Samyang f2.8 is the only lens with autofocus noise. Have a listen. Back to technical flaws of this lens, how does CA and loCA look? As you can see here, the Samyangs have the least amount of CA. The GM has some, it's not a terrible amount. Bokeh CA, this is zoomed in at 100%. GM on left, 2.8 on the right. As you can see, the green is a little bit more pronounced here. This is the bokeh outlining. And here's the purple fringing right here and here of the foreground. The GM is worse in this scenario. However, you're not really comparing the same thing. There is a lot more background blur with the GM. And here it is next to the Samyang f1.8, and they are producing similar amounts of bokeh CA. Here's the purple in the foreground, a little bit more on the Samyang, and on the background you can see these outlines. It's a little bit more pronounced on the Samyang. The next optical test would be vignetting What do you think? Without correction, these lenses are dark. The GM and 1.8 are similar, wide open. However, the f2.8 is considerably darker. And how much distortion do these lenses have? Let's take a look. Samyang f1.8. Samyang f2.8. Sony G-master. Clearly the least amount of distortion. Video folks, let's take a look at the breathing. Starting things off with the 24 f2.8 Samyang. As you can see, the focus breathing is fairly minimal. Onwards with the f1.8 version, there's a lot more background blur, and you can see that the focus breathing is still well controlled. There's not much movement going on. When it comes to the G-master, this lens breathes as much as a smoker on a treadmill. It's quite significant. It's time for the vlogging test, and would you be able to tell which lens is on the camera? This is being filmed on an A7S Mark III, active stave on, 24mm, wide open. We've got 3 lenses labeled A, B, and C. Can you tell which one is which? Here they are side by side. And time for the reveal. Interestingly enough, the GM is the most heavy and annoying out of the bunch, and at the same time it gives the most stabilized results. If you have one of the newer cameras where AF is just spectacular with anything you stick on it, the f2.8 might be your ticket, assuming you can live with the image quality, which is below average compared to all of the lenses I've tested. It probably makes very little sense considering that's a $200 lens and the 1.8 is around $500. The 1.4 is around $1,400. So which lens would you choose? And the answer is not so simple. I'm not gonna tell you don't buy the GM, save your money and buy these cheaper lenses. The GM is something that you really have to experience. If you haven't tried it and you're getting that itch, it's because, yeah, it is a beautiful lens. However, if budget is a thing, then stick with the 1.8. The results are incredible. It is a whole lot smaller than the GM and it offers a ton of features. I mean, I really don't feel like you could go wrong on either side. You'll save a ton of money going to Samyang 24 f1.8 and maybe use the funds towards something else. If you're the one lens type of person that just has one lens all the time, go the G-master because that will really give you the results that you're looking for. The decision is really difficult. I myself have these 3 lenses and I do not know which one to get rid of, and I frankly don't have a plan. On paper, it would be the middle guy, the 1.8 that I should get rid of and just keep one for travel and one for photography. Oh yeah. But on the flip side, if I just keep one, I'll probably use it more, which is the f1.8, and it's also bigger than I would like it to be. So let me know what you think below. Like, sub, share. See you in the next one.